Hi everyone. Today what we are going to be learning about is the different levels of classification for living things. Now, the reason why we are learning about this today is to help everyone to know how similar some living things are, but also what the differences are in different living things. And these similarities and differences are reflected in the different names of the levels of classification for every living thing. Now, what you're going to notice when we go through all these different levels of classification are that as we go through each one, they go from more general or broad to very specific. And the last level is the most specific. So, what I'm going to ask you to do is make sure that everything is being written in your notebook as it's written on the board. And anything that is written in green, let me repeat, anything that is written in green will go on the front of the flap, Anything written in blue will go inside the flaps. Again, anything written in green goes on the outside of the flap. Anything written in blue goes on the inside of the flap. So let's get started. Our first level of classification is going to be called the living things domain. Now, the domain is the most general of the levels of classification and includes the most organisms as a part of it. It's kind of like saying everything is a living thing, right? Very general, but the domain is going to tell you something about the living thing in that group, in that domain. So, for a lion, its domain is a eukaryote. And this is because the cells that make up a lion have a nucleus. Now, you're probably not going to know much about what a nucleus is, but what you need to know is that there are only a couple domains. One domain has cells without a nucleus. Another domain has cells with a nucleus. So all of the living things are divided into only a couple domains. So this is a really general level of classification. What we're going to do is we're going to get more and more specific as we go down. Our next level of classification is called the living things kingdom. Now, the kingdom, again, is going to get a little more specific. What the kingdom for a lion is Animalia. What you'll notice is that Animalia sounds a lot like another familiar word, animal, and that is because when something is part of the Animalia kingdom, it means it's an animal. Now, again, this is a pretty general statement about a living thing. There are a lot of animals or living things that are considered animals that exist, right? And so, even though we got a little more specific, we still are pretty general. So, what we're going to do is keep moving on with our levels. The next level of classification for living things is called its phylum. Its phylum is a little bit more specific, and for a lion, its phylum is called Chordata. Right now, you probably don't recognize anything in that word, but that word is based off chordate. Okay, and a chordate is a living thing that has a backbone. Okay, a living thing that has a backbone has something called a notochord. In humans, that is our spinal cord, right? And our spinal cord goes through our spine or our backbone. So, just a reminder, the green stuff goes on the outside flap of the flaps. The blue stuff goes on the inside of the flaps. Okay, and what we're doing here is we're just getting more and more specific as we go down with each level of classification. Let's keep going. So, the next level of classification is going to be called its class, and for a lion, that is Mammalia. Now, this one, kind of like its kingdom, sounds like a word you might recognize, mammal. And that is because mammals are the only animals with a backbone that are able to make milk. All right, so mammals make milk, and that's what makes them unique from all of the other chordata, animalia, eukaryotes. Right, so as you can see, we are just getting more and more specific because there are less living things that can make milk than there are ones with a backbone, and there's less animals with a backbone than there are just animals in general. So, let's keep going. The next level of classification for living things is called the order, and for a lion, it is considered Carnivora. That is its order name, and what that means, you'll probably recognize that as well as being similar to carnivore, which means that they eat mostly meat, if not all meat. So, what you're going to notice as we go down with each one of these levels of classification is that what the name means gets more specific, just like all of the different levels of classification. We started off with any living thing with cells having a nucleus. Then we move to specifically an animal, more specifically animals with backbones, more specifically animals with backbones that make milk, and now we are talking about an animal that has a backbone, makes milk, and eats mostly meat. So, let's keep going. The next level of classification is called the family, and for a lion, the family name is Felidae. Now, you might recognize Felidae being feline or cats, and what makes cats unique, right, more specific than any of our other statements here or names, okay, is that cats have retractable claws. So that means that they have claws that can go in and out of their foot. Some people might have pet cats that you have tried this with. If you just give their paw a little squeeze, you can actually make the claws come out of their foot if they have claws. Okay, so that's even more specific to this particular living thing, being a lion. Right? But what we're going to go over next are the last two most specific levels of classification. Those are the genus and then the species. Now, the genus and the species are special levels because they make up what we call the scientific name. This is the same type of scientific name that you learned in class before, but for a lion, the genus name is Panthera, and the species name is Leo. So, what you have here is you have a very specific genus name and then an even more specific species name, right? And the reason why these are the most specific is because, as we learned before, each living thing that exists has its own genus name and species name that makes up its unique scientific name. So, just a reminder, as you go down with the levels of classification, they go from very general to very specific, including a lot of organisms down to a little.